Welcome to the Success Story Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Clary. On this podcast, I have candid interviews with execs, celebrities, politicians, and other notable figures, all who have achieved success through both wins and losses, to learn more about their life, their ideas, and their insights. I sit down with leaders and mentors and unpack their story to help pass those lessons on to others through both experiences and tactical strategy for business professionals, entrepreneurs, and everyone in between. Without further ado, another episode of the Success Story Podcast. Today I have Steve Hoffman, better known or referred to as Captain Hoff, and I'm going to figure out why in a few minutes. As he's called in Silicon Valley, he is the chairman and CEO of Founders Space, one of the world's leading incubators and startup accelerators. He is also an angel investor, limited partner in August Capital, serial entrepreneur, and author of several award-winning books, including Make Elephants Fly and Surviving a Startup. Hoffman was the founder and chairman of the Producers Guild of the Silicon Valley chapter, board of governors of New Media Council, and founding member of the Academy of Television's Interactive Media Group. In Silicon Valley, Hoffman founded venture-backed startups in the areas of games and entertainment, and worked as mobile studio head for InfoSpace, which created mobile hit games such as Tetris, Wheel of Fortune, and Tomb Raider, Thief, Hitman, Skee-Ball, X-Files, a lot of names that you probably played around with on your phone. And then after that is where, Steve or Captain Hoff is right now at Founders Space, where he's working with a whole bunch of entrepreneurs, helping them accelerate their businesses, helping them educating them on what it takes to be successful. So he's heavily involved in the startup space, and outside of what he's done as an entrepreneur himself and as an angel investor and mentor to startups, he's trained startup founders and corporate executives in the art of innovation and provided consulting to many of the world's largest companies, including Qualcomm, Huawei, Bosch, Intel, Disney, Warner Brothers, NBC, Gulf Oil, Siemens, and Viacom. So a ton of takeaways, a ton of accolades, a ton of probably speaking points as to how you came to who you are today. So thank you for sitting down. I appreciate it.
It's great to be here with you.
No, it's exciting. So I love speaking business. I love speaking startups. Even the consulting of some of these household brand names. It's also exciting. But I'll pass it over to you and maybe start off. Why Captain Hoff?
So in Silicon Valley, that's my nickname because I'm the captain and CEO of Founders Space. And so Founders Space is a startup accelerator and incubator here in San Francisco. And we help startups not only in Silicon Valley, let me adjust this, not only in Silicon Valley, but all around the world. So we have offices as far away as China. We actually have a lot of offices in China where we work with entrepreneurs. We work heavily with them in South Korea, Australia, Taiwan, across Europe. And our goal is really, we work with hundreds of entrepreneurs every year. And our goal is to help them with their business, to help them with their concept, figuring out if there's a good fit with the market, helping them go to market, and helping them raise venture capital. I'm an investor, so I do a lot of investing in startups, both here in the United States as well as all over the world. And I'm always looking for great companies.
So this is where you're at right now. So walk us through, because this is like a very boilerplate summary that I pulled off a website. So walk us through your life, your origin story, how you came to be Captain Hoff.
How I became to be Captain Hoff. So it all started when I was a wee child. No, when I was small, when I was young, I was very passionate about being creative. So I was always doing projects. So probably like you with this podcast, I was out there as a kid. I was shooting movies. I got all my friends together, made over 50 films all the way through high school. I was inventing games. So I always knew I wanted to do something. But my father, he was an MIT rocket scientist, and he was like, son, you have to study computers. Computers are the future. So I went and got an electrical computer engineering degree.
He's not
as
wrong.
Soon as as soon as I had that degree, I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I actually went to grad school in film at USC. So I studied film and television. And then I graduated with my master's degree with no job. I was like, what do I do? So I was in Hollywood at the time. It was, I didn't know really have any inside connections or anything. So I literally found out how to reach out to all the top people in Hollywood. And I would contact them. I'd write them letters, right? Trying to get their attention. So I sent out 150 of these to the top people in Hollywood when I could get their information. I only got 3 responses. So the very first response I got was from the producer of Empire Strikes Back, the Star Wars series. So he called me up. He said, I loved your letter. I thought it was great. I don't have a job for you, but he just wanted to chat. So we spent like 45 minutes talking, and that was that. The second call I got back was from Disney. So they invited me in to an interview where I met them, and I was really, really wanted the job at Disney, and it was going very well. It was with the director of production, so my dream job. And then they asked me, what films do I like? And they're like, do you watch a lot of Disney films? And I go, yeah, I watch some Disney films. But then I started, because I'd gone to film school and I knew all these amazing directors, producing, incredible works. And I started to rattle off all these, high-end directors with their incredible works. And then they go, but none of those are Disney films. As soon as I did that, the job interview was literally over. Like, if I wasn't going to say what they wanted to hear, so this is maybe a lesson for you.
Yeah.
In a job interview, you can't say what you really believe. You got to say that their product is the greatest. So I learned, basically, I saw that the expression on the head of the production's face, her expression just went shut down. When none of the directors I listed or none of the films were Disney that I was really passionate about, and it was over. I was literally over. So then I had one other person out of all those people I'd spent all this time trying to reach out to, brought me in. His name was Chuck Freeze. At the time, he had a big office on Hollywood, this big building, the top floors. He had his name it was Hollywood Boulevard. He had his name in huge letters. Everybody knew it. And he had produced over 150 television shows and movies and things like that. So he's very well known. And he brought me into his office. It's this huge, imposing office, like you'd see in a Hollywood movie. It's like the type of office you would imagine a Hollywood producer to have, a big shot. This long, long, long office. All his Emmys were on the wall and everything. And then he looks at me and he goes, what do you want? What do you want, Hoffman? And I was like, I want a job. I want a job in Hollywood. I want to be a writer in Hollywood. Can you hire me? And then he just goes on, I don't know about this. And then I'll see what I can do. And then I wait, and a week later, I get a job offer. But it's not the job I had in mind after going to graduate school and film school. It was a low-level job. It was called a script reader. And basically, you're paid by the script, very little money, to read the script as quickly as you can and then summarize it and give it back to them. It's not a job where you can even afford to pay your rent, let alone buy pizza. So it's something you do when you have no job or nothing else to do. But I took it. It was the only thing I had. There was nothing left. So I took this job. I worked really hard analyzing these scripts, doing the best. There's a bunch of other readers, like a dozen other coming in and out every day, getting scripts, going back. And the head of production that worked under Chuck, she was, she was very nice. She'd give me the scripts and stuff. And then a couple weeks later, I was like, I can't do this forever. I want to make stuff. I don't want to just read stuff and write a synopsis so they don't have to read it, so they can just read my synopsis. So I asked to meet with Chuck again. And I get an appointment. I go back into his office. He's sitting there. He's this huge guy. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Barton Fink.
No, I haven't.
Seen that? It's a
No.
Coen Brothers movie. It's
Okay.
a great movie. It's about Hollywood. And it's about this young writer who comes to Hollywood. Well, the producer in that movie looked just like Chuck and
Okay,
talked like
I'll
him.
Google it after.
He's this big guy, this giant guy, and he kind of like, oh, Hoffman, what are you doing back here? Aren't you happy with your job? And I go, Chuck, I could do more. I can do more than read. I could write for you. I could do that. Oh, Hoffman, you're not even satisfied. Go away. Sends me away. But sure enough, a week and a half later, he gives me an opportunity. So I get to work with his son, who's in the office, who is a disgruntled, he's working for his dad, right?
Yeah.
So he feels like he's failed, and he's in his like late 30s, and he isn't really producing. He's just working for his dad, and so he's bitter. But and everybody in the office is terrified of him. So his name is Butch, and he looks at me like, like glares at me. He doesn't smile at anybody. So I'm terrified, my first job. But he gives me this project to actually write a whole, what's called a treatment, which is an outline for a miniseries, a TV miniseries about the Wild West. So I do all this research. I work really hard. I write it. I give it to him, and I'm waiting. And eventually calls me back into his office, and he goes, "This is really good." So, wow, he loved it, And I was happy, I actually got him to smile. And then as soon as I got that confirmation, I made another appointment with Chuck to go back and ask him to do more. So I wait. He calls me into his office. He goes, "Hoffman, do you ever give up? Are you ever satisfied?" And I go, "Yeah, but I can do more than, do an outline for a film. I could write stuff for you. I could be a writer." "Hoffman, I don't know about you. Go away." So I go away. I'm at work. I continue working for a couple more weeks. I get called in to the head of development, and I sit down to get my script. Nothing's happening. She looks at me, and she is upset. She is like mad. Like I could see that fire in her eyes. And she goes, "You got me fired." And then she stands up and runs out of the room. And I was like, what's going on here?
You're still young when this is like your first job.
College.
Yeah.
I just graduated college. So I don't know what's going on. I'm sitting in her office. Then the secretary for Chuck calls me into his office, and I sit down there. I'm really flustered. I have no idea. This is crazy. And Chuck goes, "Hoffman, you're the new head of development. It's your job." And I'm like, what? So he basically fired her and put me in her job.
Because the script you wrote was good.
Yeah, but she's not a writer.
Okay,
that was the job I was asking for. I was asking to be a writer, and she's a development executive. So I got put in her job. I didn't know what she did. Like I had no idea. So I go sort of terrified, like I don't know what the job is. It wasn't what I wanted. And I'm back in her office. My office overlooks Hollywood Boulevard. Across the street is the Man Chinese Theater. It's like just like a movie. If you've seen the movie Swimming with Sharks, it's another great movie. It was just like that. And so it's like kind of living out these movies about Hollywood. And then the phone rings, and I don't know what to say or whether to pick it up. So eventually I pick it up, and I'm like, "Hello," and they ask for her, and I go, "Well, she's not here right now. Can I help you?" And it's this agent from ICM, and he's like, "Can we send over this script, blah, 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 blah." And I don't know what to say, so I'm saying, "Sure, send it over." And then I go back to her desk, and all the other readers start to come in. And they're like, where is Karen? Where is she? I'm like sitting at her desk, and I was like, "Well, she's not here right now, but I'm kind of doing the job." But they've been working as a reader, some of them for years, like 5 or 6 years. They know the job much better than I kind of just started a couple months ago. And so they have to tell me what to do. Like they have to instruct me like what to do. And then it gets worse because I was sort of I liked high-end movies. I told you earlier with Disney. So they call me in. Chuck calls me into his office with his 2 sons, and I'm sitting there, and he's like, "Hoffman, we have this TV show. We want to cast this actress in it, and it's about this, and that, blah, 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 blah. Who do you think should star in it?" Well, I have no idea. I don't even watch TV. Like, I'm so busy, like, working and watching these high-end films at film school that I was just like, haven't watched TV for years. I have no idea who the hot actresses are or actors are or any of this stuff that that I'm supposed to know. So I'm panicking. Like, he's asking me to say something. I'm like, he's going to fire me tomorrow. Like, I'm over. I'm done. This is like, he's going to find out I know absolutely nothing about this job. So I say, Chuck, let me come back with you with a good answer tomorrow. I need to think about this. So I go back to my office. As soon as I get back to my office, I call my brother's best friend. He works in Hollywood. He's a young guy, but he has a photographic memory, and he is obsessed with everything Hollywood. And he literally knows every actor, the A actors, the B actors, the C actors, the actors that just had a cameo in one television show 20 years ago. He'll know them, right? So I call him up and I describe the story, and I go, who would be perfect? And he goes, oh, well, this person would be your first choice, this is your second, this actress is your third. Next day, I get called back into Chuck's office. Hoffman, have you thought about it? Who should we put in the role? Well, this would be my first choice. This would be the second. And this would be the third. Hoffman, that's brilliant. So basically, every day of this job, I was sure I was going to get found out and I would be fired. But gradually, I learned what to do as a development executive. And with the aid of my friends, I could actually perform the job halfway decently and still do some writing on the side. And I stuck with that job for a year. And then I decided it wasn't for me. It wasn't like I wasn't writing. I wasn't really doing. I was just kind of managing the development process. I was like, I got an opportunity to go to Japan and work for a big game company, which was, I thought, oh, I can make games. I can design games. They're going to put me in as a designer because they wanted to hire somebody from Hollywood. So I basically took that opportunity and quit the job. And then Chuck was like shocked. He's like, what are we going to do? Wow. Yeah. Is there another Hoffman we can get? Do you know what I told him? Well, you could hire my brother. He hired me. It's nepotism. It's Hollywood. I was like, you could hire my brother. Your brother? What is he doing? Well, he is working in a record store. Does he have any experience? No, he has no experience whatsoever, but he's living in LA right now, and he would certainly like the job. And then he's like, if he's a Hoffman, we're hiring him. So they hired my brother.
That's too funny.
I flew off to Japan, and my brother's really smart. He did a great job. But I flew off to Japan, and then I worked in games for another year, designing games. And
that was a whole new learning curve, though.
Yeah,
coming from where you were. Yeah, because that's not
totally new. Right. So I had to start over again, and it was a whole nother story. I won't go into too much detail, but I lasted a year, and then after a year, I decided I had all these game ideas that I wanted to make that they weren't ready to produce. So I was like, I'm just going to start my own game company, but I can't do it in Japan. I have to move back to Silicon Valley, back to San Francisco. So I moved back there. That's when I became a startup founder. My first company was a game company. My first game was called Gazillionaire. So it's all about it's still popular today. So even this was a long time ago, but it's on Steam now, the game, and it's all about how you become an entrepreneur. But it's fun. It's like you're in outer space and you're trading lava lamps and all these crazy products and growing your business and advertising. And that game was a hit. We closed a big deal for that. Got put in all the stores. Went everywhere when it first went out. And then I made a series of games in my own company. After that, I started sort of a game combined with television, my two pieces of background and technology. Combined them all, did an interactive TV technology company, and went back to Hollywood, did that whole thing. And I just kept going. I did 3 venture-funded startups. And then after that, all my friends started to come to me and like, Steve, Captain, how do you raise money? How did you start these companies? What did you do? And then I would just tell them, like, for fun. And they all had similar questions. They were all asking the same questions. So I basically, what I did was I would start to write down the answers I gave them and post them on my blog. And I named that blog Founder Space. And founder space is what became our incubator and accelerator. Because after doing the blog, people I didn't know started to ask me questions about their startups. And I was like, well, come to a meeting. And we'd do these founder space roundtables. And then they're like, don't you want to start an incubator or accelerator? So in 2011, we started our own kind of incubator and accelerator. And basically, it started here. But I started to meet people from all over the world, right? They were like coming at me and they were saying, well, could you, we want to bring Silicon Valley to Budapest, or we want to bring Silicon Valley to Hangzhou, wherever, Sydney, Australia. Can you help us? And I was like, sure. So we started to take our programs overseas. I started to travel a lot. Last year, I traveled like 70% of my time. This year, I'm not traveling. I'm stuck at home.
I think everybody's stuck at home right now, but
but I traveled all over the world. We basically ran courses in other people's incubators, accelerators. We worked with different governments all over the world. We set up our own incubators and accelerators, and it just kept going. And we did investments and all this stuff. It's been a crazy, wild ride. But in my life, doing all of these things, either you're an entrepreneur or you're not. So in your life, if you're an entrepreneur, you're just trying many, many, many crazy things. Like what can you do in your life? What will happen? And originally when I went to abroad, like I got invited to China, first of all, they invited me there. I thought, oh, this is just a free trip, right? They paid my flight and everything. I'm never going to do business in China. Like, it's too different. I don't know anything about it. But, I saw an opportunity. And this was several years back when they were because it was behind the U.S. They're just starting to grow their startup ecosystem. Now China is huge. I mean, they have as many unicorns as we do. Like, it's a huge startup area. But at that time, it wasn't. And I became super famous in China, much better known than I am here in my own country, the United States. Like, everybody in kind of business knows me. And because I was just there at the right time, we set up our incubator. I wrote a book. My first book, Make Elephants Fly, was like a bestseller there. We did all these deals. And so, my advice to anybody out there is don't be rigid. Don't be fixed on what you think should happen. Because if you think something should happen and and it's not happening, this is where I see most entrepreneurs fail. They're like, this is my vision, and I think it should be this way, but the world doesn't care, right? The world doesn't care what you think in your head. The world only cares about whatever it cares about. So, I always say the best entrepreneurs in the world, they don't, we have this vision, and I'm a romantic, so I'm a passionate guy, if you can't already tell, but I believe that, like, you should always follow your vision. But I learned that the times when I stuck with my vision, whatever it was, were the times, and I kind of put on blinders. I'm like, I'm doing this no matter what people say. They can say it sucks. Nobody can tune in. I'm still going to do it. Those usually weren't successful. But the times where I looked is an interaction between what I did and the feedback I got from customers, from the marketplace, from things like that, and I kind of let it take me in a direction where there was a real need. Those are when it took off in a big way. So my kind of learning on how to be successful is, one of the fundamental lessons is, to be successful, an entrepreneur's job isn't necessarily to create something entirely new that nobody's ever thought of. An entrepreneur's job is to discover unmet demand, to discover something unique, create some sort of value. It can be an entertainment. It doesn't matter. It can be a product. All these businesses are the same. It doesn't matter whether it's Hollywood or the entertainment industry, or the tech industry or any industry. If you're going to innovate, you need to innovation is about being an explorer, going where other people haven't gone, trying something out, and then gauging demand. And if you can strike a really, like a gusher, like when you hit an oil well, it's untapped demand that nobody has gotten, and it's just pushing you, then you have it. That's when you put all your energy into it. Before that happens, don't commit in your mind. Because I see most startups fail because they stick with the same idea too long, rather than that they try too many things.
I want to keep going and speak about what you're working with now with Founderspace, and like maybe some of the startups that you've worked with. But one thing that I noticed, and I kind of want to dive into that, because you pivoted a lot in your career. So you went from film, you went to game development, to building out your own game. And I think what I wanted to understand was, when you came back from China, you said you started this game Gazillionaire, and it was sold, and now it's on Steam, and it's worked out well. But one thing that I didn't hear from you that was interesting, I didn't hear a lot about like any failures that you had over your career. And that's one thing that I always notice, like, entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, speak about. So I was curious about things that may not have gone as well as you thought, or were you just very fortunate with like the ventures that you did?
No, I failed a lot of times. And because I tried a lot of things, failure, first of all, for every entrepreneur I know, is literally part of the process. If you're going to go off exploring and try something crazy, you're going to fail most of the time, because it's something new. It's something nobody's tried, and you won't know if it'll work until you try it. So, my first couple games, my first few games were a success. I got like super lucky. But then I went, and I told you I did that interactive TV company, where we were actually the first company to combine laptops. Like, on your laptop, you could play along with a live TV show. So at first, we were a huge success. Like, we literally, it's a whole nother story. Won't go into it, but it's a crazy story about, we were like totally out of money, but at the last minute, we closed a deal with MTV, Viacom. And we closed a deal, and we had to pivot many times. So when I first started that company, it was called Spider Dance. So the first product we launched, we were like, well, first it was going to be online games. We were at the very beginning of online games. There really was one successful online game at the time, and it was called EverQuest. And it was just like a nascent industry, wide open. And we were like, well, doing games is a tough business, right? It's a hit-driven business. You can put like 2 years of time into a game, and it just flops. Like, why did it flop? Well, it's just like movies. Some are hits and some aren't. So we're like, I knew this business. I knew the game business. I'd made 3 of my games that were successful, and I was like, let's don't build games. Let's build an online platform, because platforms, you don't have to have a hit. We can just get a lot of other people on our platform. So we started out building an online gaming platform, and I basically ran out to all these other people and tried to get them, game developers, to sign up on our platform. Well, it was so early in the days of online that they didn't trust us. There were no online gaming platforms, and gamers tend to be fiercely independent, game developers, and they all wanted to build it themselves. And those that I could get to join wanted us to do all the specific customization work for their game. And the technology was still immature. We were a small team, like, just 4 people. We didn't have the resources to do that. So immediately we had to pivot the first time. So the first thing, we failed fast. They didn't have this lean startup methodology back then. It was pre to that, but we kind of intuitively knew we can't deliver on this product. So then we tried to build our own online game, and we got into casual gaming. And we were the first ones to build another kind of really pushing the limits. We were the first ones to try a platform for online gaming. And then we were the first ones to try a plugin that you could plug into any website, and we called it Jabber Chat. And you could actually play games as you chatted. Like, you could chat online, and which was really getting popular, and you could play games as you chatted, and they were fun word games and other games, so it would make chatting a whole new experience. Well, this won the best interactive game on South by Southwest, the big conference. Yeah. All hundreds of sites embedded our code into their site. We were the first, and they were like, this is so cool. And then we were like, okay, and then we put in ad revenue, right? Yeah. Now, this was early days of advertising on the internet. And we were like, okay, we've got all these sites, we got all this recognition, we're going to make money. You know how much money we made our first month with hundreds of sites using our product?
How much?
Not enough to buy a pizza. We made, literally, the ad market wasn't there yet. It was the early days of the .com, thing. And there were these services, there was no Google AdWords. There was none of this. It was just some other service that some random people, and they really had no advertisers that would pay any decent money. So we're like, we can't live off of this. Like, we've already tried one pivot. We've tried another. We're running out of money. This is our own money we're spending. We need something that'll work. And that's when we heard that MTV was going to do an interactive TV show. And we're like, oh my God, how do you get a deal like this done, with MTV? We didn't know anybody at MTV. So we kept calling them, though. We got a phone number of like the vice president of MTV in charge of interactive, and we kept calling him and leaving messages on his voicemail. He never called back. And then one of my partners, she got invited to CES to give a talk. So she goes up on stage on CES, and she starts talking about, we hadn't built anything yet. We were just beginning. We had just pivoted.
Yeah.
She starts talking about our dream to build an interactive TV platform. And after she's done with the talk, this guy comes running up, and he's like, I got to talk to you. I got to talk to you. You have exactly what we need. And she was like, oh, who are you? I'm the vice president of MTV. And she goes, I've been leaving messages on your voicemail. And literally, we closed the deal. We got a lot of money. We produced the whole thing, but we got the rights to take the technology and the platform out to other TV providers. So we took it out broadly. We got Viacom, we got Warner Brothers, we got NBC, we got Game Show Network, we got History Channel, we just Turner Networks. They're all our customers. We were doing great. We got this amazing, one of our biggest competitors, which is a public company, came to us with a buyout offer. But our venture capitalists were like, this isn't enough money. It's not enough money. We're not going to do it. And then the dot-com bubble imploded. And when the dot-com bubble imploded, all our customers, every media company, they literally cut their interactive spend. So anything interactive, which is what we were doing, got slashed to zero. I don't know if you remember of the time, but there was this group called NBCI, which is NBC's interactive group. They had 250 employees. We were doing Weakest Link, their big game show at the time for them. And they basically got cut to 3 employees. So they had no money to pay us. With all our money gone and all our venture funding that we had raised was basically we had burned through it. We were expecting to do another big round and grow our business. Nobody wanted to invest right now because we had no customers and we were out of money and things were like now. It was this big implosion, right?
Yeah.
And our industry was particularly hard hit. So at that time, I cut a deal with our creditors. We didn't go bankrupt, but I basically, because our creditors were in bankruptcy, we had borrowed a bunch of money too to keep going, and they had lent to a bunch of venture companies, and so they were in bankruptcy. So basically, I cut a deal where I handed off our tech, and we basically quietly shut our doors. Now, I will tell you, this was a failure, right? It was a total failure. It hit me really hard because up until that point, I had nothing but success, and I thought that And I was sure this company would be successful because we had done so well. And here I had basically should have taken that buyout offer that we had earlier that would have made all the founders rich and would have done incredibly well. But at the time, hindsight is 20/20. But I blamed myself. So I went into a depression. I felt so awful, and I doubted whether I should ever be an entrepreneur again. I seriously doubted. Now you wouldn't think of that because I've done it my whole life. But at that point, I was just I was ready to, I basically, I ended up moving to Canada. I ended up writing a book on game design. I was just I wrote a lot of short stories, science fiction. I even wrote a novel. I was just I don't know what to do. After the dot-com implosion. So I was just I shouldn't go back and be an entrepreneur because I blew it. But then gradually, I realized that the only thing preventing me from trying again was myself. I was basically telling myself that you had failed, you weren't, you shouldn't, you had let down your employees, you had to lay them all off, you had let down everybody's dream. You shouldn't do this again because you're a failure. And at a certain point, I realized that as long as I said that, it was going to remain true. Right, I wasn't going to take a big risk. I wasn't going to do another company. Because I feared having that happen again because it was so painful. And That wasn't my last failure, I will tell you. But it was the pivotal one because it basically taught me that, no, I can go back out there. I can do it. Failing is fine. I have my successes. I have my failures. There's some things in the world you can't know ahead of time. There's some things in the world you can't control, like we're going through right now with the coronavirus and the economy. You can't control, or the dot-com bubble bursting. You can't control those. But the one thing you can't control is your own attitude and your own mental script. What you say to yourself, how you view the world. I could control that, and over time, I became more and more resilient through that failure and subsequent things. Because look, if you're doing a startup, anybody out there has been an entrepreneur of any sort, there's always ups and downs. Even if you're working in a corporate job, like there are ups and downs. Like not everything you do works out. And it doesn't matter where you are, life is full of ups and downs. And the point is, whenever I get overwhelmed now, whenever I am stressed out, I look back and say, look, you went through like so many of these failures, like where things didn't work out and all your dreams were shattered and you thought you could never get over it. And now you don't even care. In fact, it makes a good story now. Like it's a fun story to tell people, and you wouldn't even have that story. And I couldn't relate to like entrepreneurs who are going through trouble if I personally hadn't, totally and utterly failed and let down everybody on my team, and made decisions that I would later regret. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't know what it's like to do that. And so whenever things happen now that don't go right, I'm just like, oh, that's nothing. Like that could be bad, but I'll live through it. And at the end of the day, if you have that attitude, you actually make better decisions because you don't get stressed out. You don't get anxious. You're not like, there's no negative feedback coming from yourself. Right? And you're able to actually navigate. And most of these things, like literally, like every day, there's something that doesn't go perfectly, right? In most people's lives, there's no perfect thing. Now, whenever something, even small thing, I'm like, will you even remember this thing that seems so important today? Like you're like so anxious about it. Will you even remember that like 5 years from now? You won't. Will you even remember it a year from now? Probably not. Will you remember it 6 months from now? No. The answer is usually no. So why are you worried? Like, why are you stressed out? It doesn't even. So
how do you get out of your own? Because I've worked with entrepreneurs before, and like the biggest issue they have is getting out of their own head, and understanding that it's that failure is part of the process. It shouldn't be like failure shouldn't always be welcomed. Like you want to succeed, but I mean like it's going to take a lot of shit that you have to go through before you are successful, and if you are successful. So you work with tons of entrepreneurs. How do you sort of enlighten them to this?
Oh, so some of it's storytelling, and some of it is you're never out of your head, right? So you're always trapped in your head, but you can change what your head does. So you could literally reprogram your head like you would reprogram any code to actually put things like I reprogram so that when I hear myself saying negative things about myself or getting stressed out, usually you're getting stressed out. You're getting stressed out because you're telling yourself to be stressed out. You're saying, this is so important. I can't, oh my God, I'm so angry. I'm so upset. If you listen to what you're saying to yourself, you can hear yourself programming yourself in a negative way. You're actually telling yourself how to feel. So if you literally just step back and say, I don't actually have to feel this way. I could feel fine about this because I know in the future I'm not even going to care about it. And I know that getting stressed out won't change the situation. It's not going to make me make a better decision. In fact, it just depletes the energy that I actually could use to actually figure out how to solve this problem, or if it's unsolvable, to move on to something else that I could make a difference on. So that's the key I tell entrepreneurs.
Is that the biggest, do you find that that's like the biggest issue they have? Like an entrepreneur, like a first time entrepreneur, do you find that mental, hurdles that they have to get over?
It's different with every entrepreneur. So some entrepreneurs are just amazingly resilient, and they always are able to do this. You look at some of them, like Elon Musk is doing crazy stuff, right? And half of it doesn't work. He has rocket ships blowing up. Tesla almost went bankrupt several times, and every day there's a new disaster or something on his production line. So But, he just keeps going. So some people naturally have it built in. Other people like me weren't as blessed. Like, we were actually programmed differently from childhood. We were much more anxiety prone, let's say, or much more prone to depression, or not, reacting in the right way.
Which many people are. That's a lot of people,
so
I think, have a ton of anxiety.
I was programmed with a lot of passion, but also, not as strong, not as resilient as many other entrepreneurs are. And so that was my weakness. So I had to work on it. Whereas other people, everybody has different weaknesses and different strengths. And you just have to recognize, what you're not good at and really focus. So mine was a conscious effort to get over that. It was a conscious effort to give myself the tools necessary so that when I faced adversity, I didn't crumble in front of it like I did the first time. Like when that company, like it just hit me way too hard. It didn't have to do that. Like I did that to myself. And I think the one thing I can say to entrepreneurs is the more you go through it, the more you realize that you can go through it. Right. And so the more you put yourself out there, but if you can prep yourself in advance so you don't have to suffer as much, you should start doing that now. You should start it on the little things and then graduate to the bigger things. Like those little things that make you upset or unhappy or whatever, you should focus on, listen to what you're saying in your head. And that will get you not out of your head, but into a different mental state where you can be more objective about what's happening. Oh, I'm making myself feel this way. We don't just feel like we'll have our initial reaction, right, of anxiety or stress. That initial reaction, I can't control it, but maybe a Buddhist monk could. But I'm not a Buddhist monk, but I can't control it. But what I can control is what comes after that initial reaction. And that is my response to the negativity. So I might feel stressed out, but then I can step back and all of a sudden start to push myself back into a better frame of mind.
Let's speak a little bit more about Founder Space and what you're working on now, if you don't mind. Because I love speaking entrepreneurship. So I guess what does Founder Space focus on? And also what are your takeaways from what Silicon Valley is today? I just want to get your 2 cents on Silicon Valley because you're living it. So
I am living it. So Founder Space today focuses on helping entrepreneurs around the world, educating, training. I do a lot of public speaking. I give a lot of talks around the world. We run our own programs. We run our own incubators. So basically training and helping entrepreneurs raise capital. And then we invest in some startups, not every startup we work with because we work with way too many. But that is our mission. And we're really committed to that. And I believe the biggest gift we actually give in the end is not the money or not even the relationships. It's the experience that we share, that myself, all of the founders of Founder Space, and all of our instructors have been entrepreneurs. And we've all failed and we've all gone through it. And we've been through it not just with our own companies, but also with many, many other companies that we've been helping. So that gives us a lot of knowledge. We can see where a company is going, and we might have had a startup just like that. And we're saying, no. We saw somebody go down that path. This is what's going to happen. Like you need to start thinking of alternatives right now. Because if you just keep working on it this way, it's a dead end for you, or you're going to go off a cliff as a company. So really helping them early on to evaluate their business, to make smart decisions is the biggest thing we give them. Silicon Valley today is a very dynamic place. It's a very different place. When I started here with my first game company, when I got back from Japan, Silicon Valley, it was like the late 90s, the mid 90s, actually. It was like a long time ago. It was nothing like today. It was much more laid back. It was much less corporate. It was much, a little more bohemian. And it was a different world. San Francisco and Silicon Valley were a different world. Today, it's a much it's a much bigger business, right? There's massive amounts of venture capital and startups, and we've gone through so many different iterations. So it's not worse or better. It's just a much larger scale and a much more systematized. And venture capitalists are more knowledgeable than they ever were before. They're much better at. And when in the early days they just didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Now they didn't know about the lean startup. They didn't know about any of this. So now venture capitalists there's a playbook they go by that can be good and bad. My feeling is the really interesting thing is that it's not just Silicon Valley anymore. We have a lot of resources here, but if you go to Beijing or Shenzhen or Berlin or London or Seoul, Korea, all of these places, there's startups everywhere. There's incubators everywhere. There's people innovating. It's like a really exciting world. So Silicon Valley is still the biggest innovation hub in the world. I work with a lot of the venture capitalists here, a lot of the entrepreneurs. I wrote my books based on all my experience, my Make Elephants Fly and Surviving a Startup. Those books are based on that. But you can get that experience all over the world now. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley. But the beauty of Silicon Valley is that when you go to China, like Beijing, they're mostly Chinese. When you go to Korea, South Korea, Seoul, it's mostly Korean. When you come to Silicon Valley, it's not mostly Americans. Over half the startup companies are founded by somebody born overseas. So foreigners found half the startup companies, and that creates a real diversity of mindset. So you're meeting people from India, you're meeting people from Asia, you're meeting people from Europe, and they look at the world a different way when you're working with them, and that allows our companies who have these talent pools from all over the world to be much more creative, much more innovative, because they're getting different perspectives and people are blending ideas, and you're going to meetings and you're seeing all these different things from all over the world, and they're all converging here on Silicon Valley. Everybody wants to come to Silicon Valley at one point or another. So this inflow of ideas and knowledge, it's a very exciting place. It's really, to me, that's why it's still the hub. It's not the hub because it produces more value, because there's value being produced everywhere in Israel and all over. But it's the hub because it's where everybody in the world meets and is open and is free and is exchanging ideas.
So where do you think, I'm just curious because we're kind of living it right now. Do you think that Silicon Valley will be affected by coronavirus and the recession, or do you think that it's going to come out the same way it's been growing?
Well, it's already been affected. I mean, startups now are, if you're a startup like in the food tech business or serving restaurants,
yes, of course. Yeah.
Yelp, you've laid off 1,000 people from Yelp, and these companies are being dramatically affected. Will it affect Silicon Valley in the long run? In the next few years, it's definitely, we're going to feel the effect. It's not, this thing isn't going away tomorrow. Like, these effects linger, right? So, and venture capital is already becoming more conservative. All of these things are changing. But in the long run, Silicon Valley is very resilient. We've been through the dot-com bubble burst. We've been through the 2008 financial crisis. We always bounced back. The beauty of technology is there always new technology coming, and every time a new technology is born into the world, it creates a million new opportunities for entrepreneurs. And trust me, there's a lot of technology in the pipeline, a lot that is totally blow us away. Like in the next few years, we're going to see technologies out there that change how we use our computers, change how we use our phones, change even how we think and act in our everyday lives. So if what we've seen in the past with Facebook and Uber and all these companies and Apple and Google is amazing, wait until the next 10 years. We're going to be more amazed.
Yeah, I think that, and I've seen this a little bit, and I scan the news and whatnot, and it's pretty hard to avoid now, but the amount of companies that are wising up to how to incorporate new technologies, I think actually could be a benefit to Silicon Valley, because people are a traditional industry that perhaps didn't understand or bring in the same technology as like you would in like startup land. I think they have to be a little bit more inclusive of new tech.
Well, look at it. Who is winning on the retail side on commerce side out of all the companies? Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Tech-driven company, because even in this conditions, it can fulfill in the conditions of like the coronavirus, it can fill everybody's need. very efficiently. And Amazon is further automating. There will come a point where there'll be nobody working in their warehouses. It'll be all machines. I guarantee it. You go to the Amazon store now. They don't really need these Amazon Go stores. You don't really need people in them. They're designed to be automated, needing a minimal staff. This is the future. It's just one industry. But across the board, we're seeing industries that this will only accelerate the pace of automation. I'll tell you that for sure, because it's a vulnerability, right? We've shown it's a vulnerability. It will change the landscape. There's a lot of pluses and minuses. I'm giving talks on this now. Will we have a jobless society? We'll definitely have jobs will change, and eventually, ultimately, we will have a jobless society. Where we won't have to work. We may want to work because, like you and I, we love what we do. We like communicating and teaching, and there will still be people working, but it's going to be a very different world coming, and all of us will have to adapt, and technology is going to play a pivotal role in the
What does that mean? Jobless society. What does that mean? For
that
people
means
listening.
I'm not going to put a date on this. It could happen, it's not going to happen overnight, put it that way. So there are always new jobs being created with new technology. There's always jobs being discarded throughout the history of humanity, right? Very few people are leather workers today or cobblers. You just don't walk down you're a cobbler. That used to be a big profession, making shoes, but you don't see that. So it's always going to change. But at some point, with artificial intelligence and robotics advancing at the pace they're advancing, there will come a point where literally a machine can do everything a person can do in terms of most work. A machine, they even have algorithms now, AI algorithms that can compose music, and you can't tell the difference. They're putting this music now on Spotify and others, and you wouldn't know if it was an AI band or a real band. It sounds the same. And these machine learning algorithms are pretty amazing. They can sample music, and then they can actually compose something very original in different styles that you would, even experts can't tell. And painting too. These AI generated paintings are they're beautiful. They're gorgeous. So it doesn't matter if it's a creative or if it's technical or if it's manufacturing. Of course, certain jobs will go first. Autonomous cars are coming. That's going to wipe out millions and millions of jobs. Factories are being automated. It's still a lot of factories need people because people are very versatile. Where labor is cheap, we've already seen them all move to China. Now they're leaving China and going to Southeast Asia because the labor is cheaper. But at a certain point, the machines will be cheaper even than the cheapest labor human can produce, and it's all economics, right? It's economics in every job. And
how do you go ahead. Sorry, I was going to ask how you upskill to sort of protect against losing the job.
Well, you can only protect for so long.
Right.
We're all going to be in the best way is. If you own the means of production, you're protected, right? As long as you can stay on top. If you own the robots, you own the AI, you're in good shape because you can deploy this superior workforce at a low cost. But that's going to mean a massive concentration in wealth, which is going to be a big danger for our future. That the people with that wealth, if they don't want to share it, and some of them will and some of them won't be as generous, what does that mean for the rest of us? So we're going to have to re-examine society. What do people do? What do we value in society? How do we reward people? Even now, it's kind of an experiment. A lot of people working out of their homes. Should the government step in and pay people not to work? Andrew Yang, his whole idea of universal basic income. How much do we give? Of course, $1,000 a month isn't enough for most people to live. I don't know about you, but but there will be a level at which it can do that. But is that the role of our government? Will we even have a choice? That may have to be the role of our government in the future. But there are plenty of things people can do. People look at yourself. Let's say we lived in a future world where you didn't have to work. Would you stop doing stuff? Would you be bored?
No. Well, I would. I couldn't stop doing stuff. So that's why, for example, like what I'm doing now, this is not This is actually not my 9 to 5 right now. Like I still work in sales and marketing for a company, and I manage a small team, and we sell software and whatnot. But and we're all working from home now, and it's all great. But this is just maybe turns into the full time eventually, but it's not the full time right now. So
exactly. And
yeah.
would you, like most people I know, they have hobbies that they
Yeah.
love. Like some of them love sailing, some of them love stamp collecting, some of them
Yeah.
love, there's a million different surfing, and some of them love to create content like this. Some of them love to do art. People won't be bored. Like people are like, well, if people don't have a job, they won't have meaning in their life. I totally don't believe that. Like how meaningful is it to flip burgers? Like it's, people do that job because it pays them money, and they may get some sense of a joy out of the interaction with other people on the job, but the actual flipping of the burgers doesn't really. The only reason jobs give people meaning now, or when they lose their jobs they get depressed, are two reasons. One, the lack of income is depressing. Two, society tells you that if you don't have a job, you aren't providing for your family, you aren't being worthwhile. But when in a world where most people don't have jobs, right, because they simply aren't available, society will no longer say if you don't have a job, you're not worthwhile. So people will feel like, I'm not a slacker. I'm actually, normal. Like this is normal. This is the new normal. And people won't feel bad about not having a job. In fact, they will define themselves in a different way. You'll define yourself by, what you do in the world. Can you make people happy? Can you entertain people? Can you, are you working on the biggest collection of bottle caps in the world? And is this going to be your legacy? But people will do this, and people will have lots of fun.
I think people will be more fulfilled, hopefully, because I think that even now, if you didn't want to work, in theory, there's so many in most Western countries. There's so many social welfare programs that you could sit on your couch all day and not work and still find a way to get money from somewhere. To be quite honest, and some people do that, but I think the vast majority of people would maybe it's because society imposes, like these ideas of what you should do, and you mentioned like you have to provide and whatnot, but like for most people, you're not going to be rich, but you don't have to work to live day to day. But people do choose to work.
They do it because what we value more than the job is we value people are social animals. Like if you think about human beings, in the hunter-gatherer for, tens of thousands of years, they just hunted when they needed food or gathered stuff when they needed food. But most of the time, their value was on how they relate and what they give to their community. And fundamentally, we all live in this community, this social structure, and that social structure is informing us how to feel about ourselves. And that social structure will change with time, and it will free people up to do things with their time. Like right now, you're saying most of the hardest people I know that work the hardest are like super rich, but like they could stop working tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
it's like they aren't working for more money. They don't need more money. Like you look at any of these rich people, they work like Elon Musk. Does he need more money? No, he has no need for more money. Bill Gates is working like crazy, but now he's working on his philanthropy like crazy.
Yeah. But he still he puts in the hours. He's putting in the hours.
These people work. We don't work. We work because what are we going to do, right? Work creates meaning in our life. That's why we don't work for the money. So the people who think that the welfare is going to make people lazy, I just don't believe it's true. I mean, if people are going to be lazy, they'll be lazy, right?
Yeah.
They'll be lazy on the job or off the job. If they're the type who doesn't want to do anything, then that's how they're programmed. You're not going to change them. And if they're the type who are going to, if they're the type like us who just love doing stuff, love creating stuff, it doesn't matter. We're gonna figure out something to do with our time.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do it.
Yeah, I think my my issue is I always try and figure out. I always try and take on too many things as hobbies, and I have to remember that sometimes they're hobbies.
If you had no day job, I guarantee you would be busier than ever. Because you'd be like, I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to do this, and I think most people who want to be busy will be busy, and those who just want to sit around and play games or watch television, they could do that. Right?
Yeah.
They do that now every chance they get. They'll still do the same thing. People do what they do.
Yeah. I want to ask a question. The first book that you wrote, Make Elephants Fly. What is that? What is the book about? And this is not a plug. I didn't plan this at all. I just was curious about the title. Why you chose that title.
The elephant. Well, I like fun titles. So the elephant It's called Make Elephants Fly. The subtitle is what it's about. It's called The Process of Radical Innovation. And radical innovation is an innovation, not incremental, like not a little innovation, but a huge leap forward. So how do you get there? So the elephant for entrepreneurs, it's your big idea. It's your dream. It's like what you want to do, but it's an elephant. How elephants don't fly? How can you get this huge idea off the ground? So the book tells you how to come from an idea all the way to execution. How to take that idea and make it fly.
So let's speak about that. Let's speak about that because let's speak about it in the context of I have a hobby. I'm working, I'm working full time, and I'm using myself as an example. But a lot of people have these side hustles right now.
Yeah.
Especially more if you have more free time because you're stuck at home and you don't have anywhere else to go. So people are starting. I've never seen so many live Instagram sessions, live Facebook sessions before in my life. I feel like everybody's just starting something new now, so it's good. But okay, so you have an idea, you have a side hustle. How do you take that and you turn it into a flying elephant?
So this is all about the process of innovating, right? Figuring out where your idea meets reality. So it's in a way a process starting with the idea. There's a lot in there about ideation and how to create ideas. But once you have these ideas, how do you know which are the really good ones? Because if you're anything like me, I have a million ideas, right? A million ideas. And I think they're all great when I first think of them. I just get excited. I'm like, oh my God, that's the best idea in the world. But you know what? Like 99%, they have a flaw. 99% are actually ideas that will not work. And most of them, maybe not 99%, but most of them are actually terrible. So they're not great ideas. It's just in my head. So how do you go into, what is the process through which you go into the real world? You test out an idea. And also, I go through this thing called the innovation loop, where you go through a process of discovery with each new idea. So I liken being an entrepreneur to being an explorer. Now, an explorer, your job is to find something really valuable, but it's very dangerous. You're going to go into uncharted territory, like the explorers that came to the Americas. You're going to meet hostile forces, whether it be nature that's going to kill you, natural things, whether it's going to be other, companies or tribes that are going to come after you. But what you have to do is you don't know what's there. So when you first go there, it's all this black wilderness. And your job is to figure out your way through that wilderness as quickly as possible without getting killed. So getting through that wilderness without getting killed is not an easy thing. Most startups die. Over 95% from idea, from conception, all the way to, being profitable or selling your company is 95% do not make that. So what are it goes into detail on like the pitfalls along the way, where startups go wrong, what is wrong thinking. It goes into the fundamentals of business model. Like there's certain business models that are really lucrative, that like make a lot of money. And there are others that are doomed to failure. But on the surface, you might not even recognize which is which. I can give you an example. So there are a lot of people out there who put up these Kickstarter projects. And the Kickstarter projects are pretty cool. Like they are like a super cool gadget but what they don't realize is that gadget that they're putting out there on Kickstarter is there's some problems with it. Number one, maybe the market is too niche, right? There's just not enough people out there who would buy it, or that people think it's a nice to have. It's something they would like to have, but they don't really need. And even if they get enough people to like give them their initial Kickstarter target, doesn't mean it's going to be a successful product. Because the most successful products out there are products not that you sell once to a person. Because as a small company, when you sell to get a new customer, let's say you make a gadget, the profit margin isn't that high. And you start off maybe if it's really novel, you start off with a reasonable profit margin. But as soon as people in China and other countries start copying you, that margin starts to shrink, right? It goes really, really low because they'll just sell it for whatever they can get away with selling it for as low as possible. And if you have to acquire new customers, which is the biggest job for any entrepreneur, like you acquire new viewers for your show or whatever it is, right? Acquiring new customers is expensive. And if you don't have a big profit margin, you can't afford to advertise. You definitely can't afford to call them up and do direct sales, right?
Yeah.
Like person to person. And you can't afford even to market on Google if the profit margin shrinks. So that will just kill your business ultimately. So you have to recognize that. Now, the companies that really succeed well, like Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, Apple, whatever they are, they don't sell a product once. Once you buy into them, you are continually giving them money. So whether it's on your iPhone, whether you're giving them money through the App Store over and over and over, you're locked into their ecosystem, you're buying their upgraded phones, over and over and over, whether it's Amazon, which they may take a commission off every sale, whether they sell it or whether one of their partners sells it. You're giving them money every time you go back to Amazon. Whether it's Uber, the reason it got the big valuation was because once you have that Uber app, you keep using it over and over and over. So the recurring revenue, when you can get recurring revenue, that is the type of business model that really scales. Facebook has the same thing. You're going onto Facebook over and over. Every time they're getting a few pennies from you, that you view an ad, but you're going over and over and over and over. So the thing is, I go into the detail in the book, like how you can get a customer and never let that customer go. Never let that customer go. And then how can you make that customer as valuable to you as possible over their lifetime?
I love it. That's very smart. That's a very good takeaway. And I think that it's funny. I've always worked in organizations that focus on recurring revenue. My background was in telecom, and now so obviously they're very profitable. and also now I'm in SaaS or software, right? So it's always about recurring revenue. But I think that a lot of industries haven't woken up to that fact, and now they're getting hit hard, especially if they're selling physical products or they have physical storefronts or brick and mortar, and that's killing them if they haven't expanded and they haven't taken their store online or expanded their products into the recurring revenue products. That's why people are really hurting now. But that's what I think is going to fuel. I just tweeted this out yesterday. I think this will be a benchmark in the fourth industrial revolution, and it will push people to look at digital in a new way. And not just that's my opinion, at least. I don't know if it's going to change everyone's behavior, but I already know it's changing some people, because now it's like all the people that were told, oh, you can't work from home. Well, now they're all working from home, and they're probably working harder because they don't know when to shut off. And so like now all the people that had all these work-life balance issues didn't want to commute an hour and a half. Now they're all working from home. So now what does that do to all these cultures, these office cultures globally that didn't want it before? Like there's so many changes that are going to happen because of this, but also just tech and modernization in general. But it's very interesting, very, very interesting. So what are you working on now? So I there's a lot. We can probably chat for a long time. We can probably chat
forever. But I have to eat lunch at some time.
I know you have to eat lunch. So let's just chat about what's next for you. What do you want to look towards in the future? With your career, you've done a lot, and then we can wrap up this one. We could do another one in the future.
Sounds awesome.
Maybe. All right.
Okay. So what I just finished my latest book called Surviving a Startup, which is particularly relevant right now. It's everything I've learned as surviving my own startups, mentally and physically and every other way. And that book is the publisher's HarperCollins.
Yeah.
It isn't out yet, so it will be coming out soon. I'll let everybody know. If people want more of my videos and more, I'm constantly creating videos and content, and a lot of it's free out there. They can go to founderspace.com.
Okay.
And they can get that. We also have a 3-month online startup program that if they like this, they'll probably love it. And it's really cheap. We sell it really cheap. But we also, if you can't afford it, if you're struggling right now because of the coronavirus, there's a thing on there, just contact us and we'll give it to you for free. So we want everybody to be able to have this, whether you can pay or not. So just let us know.
What's in the core? Like, what do people get out of this? Like, who's your ideal customer for this?
Oh, it's any entrepreneur or anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur. And basically, what it is every day you get videos sent to you. They're short videos, mostly of me, and I am basically walking you through everything startups need to do. from the ground up. And the videos are anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. So they're really bite size, and you can watch the ones that matter to you, that are relevant to you. And you get those every day for 3 months. And then there's other material too.
If a startup, so maybe just one more thing, because I want to focus on this just very, very briefly. A startup is looking for an accelerator or an incubator. So I know Y Combinator. So what would be what's the difference? I'm sure there's a lot of ones that aren't as large as Y Combinator. Founder Space, I don't know the size or how many startups you work with, but why would a startup work with a Founder Space over a Y Combinator? Or is there certain categories, industries that are more tailored to one or the other?
So Founder Space is more internationally focused.
Okay.
So Y Combinator tends to be more focused on Silicon Valley. They run their programs here. They're very Silicon Valley based focused.
Okay.
We are very global. So a lot of our entrepreneurs, about a third of them come from North America, a third come from Asia, and a third from Europe. So it's very mixed. They would work with us because they're either coming from abroad to Silicon Valley, and our programs are kind of designed for that, or they want to take their company and products abroad. Those are two good reasons why you'd choose Founder Space. Y Combinator is excellent. There are many other good incubators, accelerators. We have no monopoly on that. There's a lot of great ones out there. And some go through multiples. Like we've had our startups, they also join Y Combinator. People go back and forth. They try more than one incubator program or accelerator program. We're very focused on education. We are also some of it's personality, like who you connect with, who you like.
That's true.
And then some of it's opportunity, because not everybody gets into like a Y Combinator's actually quite hard to get into, very difficult. We have different programs at different levels, not just one. So some of our programs are very competitive, but others are more open. And like we put on the online program and things like that are open to everybody. Yeah. So if I'm an entrepreneur, I'd tell you try as many things as possible and test them out, see what works for you, and see what timing too, right? Yeah. If you get accepted to the program at a specific time when you're coming to Silicon Valley, that can make all the difference.
I think the personality one is the one. All the points you just listed were good, but the personality one is very important, because I think the biggest issue entrepreneurs may have, hopefully not, but I think a lot of them just see money or they see support and they latch on. And it could be not the right money or not the right support, and that could be very detrimental down the road if you don't align with the right people from the get-go. So
getting with good people. Now, I don't think you can go wrong with a Y Combinator. They have very smart people.
not Y Combinator. I mean,
but there are some others where it might, they might not offer as much value.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's good to ask people who've been through the program too. I always tell people, ask people who've already been through the program if you get accepted before you decide whether it's a really good program.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, and then last sort of question, just to tee up some of your experience. I like asking these questions. One piece of advice that you would tell your younger self that would help you get to where you are a little bit quicker.
I would tell my younger self, take even more chances. Be even crazier than you already were, because you can never be too crazy. You can never have too, and really enjoy it. Enjoy every minute of it, even the failures and the things that go wrong.
I love it. And also, where do you go to learn? Books, podcasts, audibles, mentors, any good references?
Yeah. So I read tons of books. I'm an author, but even before that, I read. So I read at least one new book a week, at least. So I am just an avid consumer. I love podcasts. I love news. I'm just always I love information. I'm always sucking up information. So I'm reading New York Times, Washington Post, and every other I'm flipping through them really quickly. But I pay to subscribe because I want people who do investigative journalism and good news. So I do that. I also listen to lots of podcasts. I like those. I spend a lot of time on audiobooks now. Yeah. So I do a lot of audiobooks, and I've gotten to the point where I can listen at double speed. So, especially if it's informational, it's no problem for me. So I'll even when I'm exercising. So I'm a
Yeah.
very busy person. So like if I'm in the car, if I'm in a plane, if I'm out jogging or walking or doing any sort of exercise, I will be listening to an audiobook at double speed.
Do you have for entrepreneurs in particular, because that's obviously like the target that we're speaking about now? Obviously, Make Elephants Fly, surviving a startup when it comes out. But do you have like other recommendations for like a title that people should consume that you just
Oh,
loved?
I love so many books, so it's hard. But I will tell you, there's one about Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, called Shoe Dog. Great
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial story. Love that one. There's another one about this FBI agent who negotiates with terrorists
Yeah.
and it tells you how to negotiate, called Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
great book. I'm reading a really good one now called Influencer. That is all about I think it's called The Power of Influence.
Okay.
Because it's an audiobook. You don't look at the title every day.
No. Yeah.
So, but it's really fascinating, and it's about sales, about what you do. So it's like all these techniques. So there are so many amazing books. But one thing I do encourage people to do is don't just read business books or entrepreneurial books. Those are good. You can read my books, but read a diversity of books.
Mm-hmm.
So because it opens your mind in a different way. It makes you much more creative. So I read like great novels, all sorts of anthropological work, work on history. I read books about science and physics, and all of these give me ideas that I never would have had if I had just been too narrow. Like a lot of my best ideas, and also allows me to interact and relate to people in science, because like I read a lot of books about like cutting edge science or new technologies. It totally broadens where I think the world is going. So I encourage you, like, be as diverse as possible. Read books on sociology and psychology. There's just amazing books out there that you might not even think you're interested in, but just go Google them. What's the best book on psychology? What's the best book on sociology? What's the best book on whatever subject you don't know a lot about? And you will probably, if it's the best book, you're going to not only learn something, you'll probably love it.
I love it. Okay, good. How do people get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Okay, you can go to founderspace.com. That's the best way. Founderspace.com. Contact us. You can also email us at vc@founderspace.com.
That's all for today. Thanks again for joining me on another episode of the Success Story Podcast. You can download or stream this podcast wherever podcasts are available, including iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and many others. You can also watch this podcast on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe and share this podcast with your friends, family, coworkers, and peers. Please leave us a rating on iTunes. It takes about 30 seconds, as it allows other people to find our podcast and lets our amazing guests reach even more people with their message. And remember, any rating is fine as long as it contains 5 stars. I'm Scott Clary from the Success Story Podcast, signing off.